Hello everybody, this is Glenn Maurer and we're doing another episode of the Next Step show here on Channel 17 on cable television in Santa Barbara. This show will be available, as all of our shows are, streaming on Ustream and YouTube. And if you want to find a show or refer a friend to it, you can do a Google search for the Next Step TVSB and it'll come out as either Ustream or Google. I'm sorry, Ustream or YouTube. And you can select which of those two providers you might want to look at. You can see this show and other shows that we've done over the last several years actually available there for review. Today we have an interesting subject, animals as food, inspired by a current controversy about a video going around called Cowspiracy that some of you may have seen. We'll talk about that at the end of the show, maybe even have a bit of a trailer if we get a chance. But it made me think about what the impact of raising animals as food is on the total Earth environment, on the total the amount of resources being dedicated toward raising animal protein is amazing. So worth talking about, and we've got a really great guest here today to talk with us about this subject, Gary Krasnoff. Welcome, Gary. Gary is a Navy veteran. I think you were in the Navy. Yeah, so worked as a farmer. He's worked in oil fields, general contractor, but more importantly for our purposes, you're trained as a licensed permaculture designer.
Yep.
Tell us what that is.
Well, permaculture is a big subject. It covers organic farming, sustainable agriculture, saving water, saving resources, recycling resources. It's a huge subject. It was made originally by someone named Bill Mollison in Australia, and he actually wrote a book that's about this thick.
That was back in the 20s?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw a little bit about that history. And he's slowly been able to convince people around the world that there is something to be said for the idea of, I guess in the old days you would have called it responsible husbandry, being taking care of what you're given to till and use.
Actually, some of his ideas were so against a lot of current thinking where you have to put a lot of effort into it, where you have to till the ground. You got to use certain kind of seeds and this.
No.
And I actually saw a movie of him, an old movie, and and I didn't believe it at the time. He just said, gardening is a lazy man's thing. He says your compost pile, you just throw everything on it and you dig out the compost on the bottom. You don't have to turn it. You don't have to do this. You just start, once your garden started, you'll just let it reseed itself, So
it wasn't supposed to be a penance?
No, it isn't supposed to be like, you have to earn your bread by the salt of your tears and your sweat off your face. It's pretty remarkable, and when I saw it, I was like, nah, that's not true. I had a lot of doubt, but now my backyard's working that way. It's just like, all I do is just go out and pick the fruit, basically.
This quote I have here is interesting. The permaculture allows our tools that allow us to creatively redesign our environment and our behavior in a world of less energy and less resources. So it's easier, less hard to do it, and you need less to do it, and you get good results.
Absolutely.
You mentioned, I think you just touched on this, though I think I understand that in town you are part of the group that goes around and collects produce and other products that people have in their gardens and helps redistribute those.
That's Food for the Heart. It's a great program that they give bags of quality food to people that have been in the hospital. They're are a little bit not able to take care of themselves. It's really a gourmet pile of food every week, and our arm of it, sponsored by Jim Roerig, is we just go out and find orchards where people and houses and different venues, and anybody that wants to call Food for the Heart. We're always looking for more places, but there's whole orchards here where people donate the food for, it isn't really charity, but to distribute it. And then you get a tax break.
Yeah, great. So Food for the Heart, and they can go on and search for that. I don't know if it's a .com or .org or maybe.
I guess there is. I haven't actually seen it,
Okay.
but there is for everything else, so I imagine it's true.
Good.
If I knew we were going to talk about it, I would have had
Well,
it.
no, that's just, we just sort of
Number
wandered
one.
into that. Let's get back to the
Okay.
subject at hand here. Here's a quote that I found from, I think, a pretty responsible source talking about the impact of animals on the environment. Here's the quote, and it's a bit long, so bear with me. "The livestock sector is a major stressor on many ecosystems and on the planet as a whole. Globally, it is one of the largest sources of greenhouse gases, one of the leading causal factors in the loss of biodiversity, while in developed and emerging countries it's perhaps the leading source of water pollution. Raising animals for human consumption accounts for approximately 40% of the total amount of agricultural output in industrialized countries. Grazing occupies 26% of the Earth's ice-free surface, ground surface, and feed crop production is another 1/3 of the arable world. The sheer quantity of animals being raised for human consumption poses a threat to the Earth's biodiversity. Livestock accounts for about 20% of the total terrestrial animal biomass. In 306 of the 825 terrestrial ecoregions identified by the Worldwide Fund for Nature, livestock are identified as the current threat to that environment. And it goes on. And this is from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. So this is not some people like myself out in the periphery. These are scientists who have researched this subject. Do you see that kind of threat in the world?
I didn't until recently, but I do now. And it's really an eye-opener. It's kind of like the inconvenient truth of the inconvenient truth. Because everybody's concentrated on carbon dioxide, on cars, on, fossil fuels as the problem. And actually, all the transportation in the world takes 13% of the energy. Of the pollution, makes 13% of the greenhouse gases.
Greenhouse gases.
And minimum, just cattle alone is 18%.
Well, that's what I was going to bring out to that. We've got
And possibly 51%.
I think we have a picture on the screen that maybe, we tend to think of bucolic scenes with a nice green pasture, a few black and white cows wandering, nice fresh water available for them. But in fact, this is probably a better idea of what where our cattle comes from nowadays. These kind of industrial feedlots in which you can see the cattle lined along the road there. The truck comes along, dumps the food, and then the animals are just kept in this filth. And this is the kind of the reality that is feeding the world today. As you say, I think cows, I mean, people have made fun of this over the years, but cows do produce methane. And methane is as they said, one cow is equal to one car. One cow will produce more global warming gas in a day than a car would produce.
Methane, it produces, is 25 to 100% more toxic than CO2.
I've got a number here that says 86 times more warming power, global warming power than CO2.
So it's I've heard between 25 and 100, so that's a good average.
But, I mean, whatever it is, it's a huge, again, we tend to make fun, we giggle about this sort of thing, people just, they're farting, or they're, pigs do it, cows do it, we all do it, it's part of the environment that we live in, and yet, again, we don't see this because in our world, we only see what I say, the imaginary bucolic places, and we don't seldom pull the curtain back and look at what's behind there and see how this industrialized agriculture works.
Well, one thing that's really ironic that I just discovered or made sense to me finally is that it actually grass-fed beef where they're in the bucolic meadow, eating their grass, that's even more toxic than the feedlot because it takes another 9 months to raise the animals in in their nice grass-fed setting. So here they just run them right through, and kill them and slaughter them.
And keep them contained.
They're contained, and there they have another 9 months of farting and belching. So actually, So grass-fed beef, people go, well, I'm eating the grass-fed beef, so I'm helping sustainability. But in fact, it's the opposite.
Well, it's so hard to know what we're supposed to do. It is. You think, you feel like you will be a good person if you buy grass-fed beef, or if you buy any product that you've tried to research and think this is, on its face, it sounds like a nice thing to do. But in reality, what happens sometimes is we're being tricked. Anyway, all these cows and all these other protein sources that are being farmed are taking up, was it 40% of the arable land is what it said? Huge amounts of arable land.
Yeah.
Huge cost and productivity of water, huge cost of water.
Huge cost of water in California, of all places.
Here's another figure that I think we should go back and talk about. Domestic livestock such as cattle, buffalo, sheep, goats, camels produce large amounts of methane as part of their normal process. When the animal's manure is stored in addition, so all this manure is being, and anybody who's been out in these places know that there are these huge storage bins, which occasionally break open and get into the environment. But they produce 10% of U.S. methane is just from manure storage in the U.S. So all of this has to do with, most of these animals are being raised for beef. Some are raised for milk, but some are
even the ones that are raised for milk are eventually raised or used for beef.
They are used for meat, either in one product or another.
Yeah,
that's true.
They're just used until they're, until they give, once they start giving less milk, then they're turned into a beef animal.
Right. So we have another chart up here, which I think is, if I can get it up there, shows the dead zones around the world. All this storage, this runoff from the animals, the stuff. Here's a picture of it. Let's leave that up for a while. All the animal waste that is being produced is either collected in these tanks if they're being responsible. And hopefully, I don't know what they do, put it into groundfill or something. I can't imagine what they eventually do with it.
It gets into groundwater more often
than not, it's going to get into the creeks.
Or into the ocean.
Well, that's it. It gets into the creeks. And, there are some, if some people want to go online and look at dead zones, there's some interesting charts on there, but this is the one I thought was the most effective for our purposes. What happens is it just runs off the pastures and the farms and into the creeks and then into bigger rivers and into the oceans. And one of the things it does in the ocean, because it contains so much noxious material, not just the animal urine and feces, but animals are treated with antibiotics in almost every industrialized situation. I saw a number that said 80% of all the total antibiotic used in the United States goes into animals. So anyway, what happens is it runs into these, and these pictures here around the world show circles of what they call dead zones. And dead zones are areas where these creeks and rivers flood into the oceans and create weeks and months of water that's so unproductive it doesn't support any life. It's anaerobic. It doesn't have oxygen. It can't have fish or other things, maybe some jellyfish. That's about it. So let's go back and talk about, I hope that people are frightened by that. That's one of the direct consequences of animal husbandry according to some theories.
Oh, that's really true. Actually, I was working at a ranch 2 weeks ago that have, and this is just from horses, they don't even have cattle.
Yeah.
And they have mounds of horse manure mixed in with their straw, and,
right, yeah,
like maybe
the
30
cleanup, yeah.
like tons of it. And I'm like, well, that's really good. You can use it on your orchards. They can't use it on their orchards because it's all full of steroids and antibiotics.
Oh my goodness!
So it's all sitting there. Just maybe we can take it to another place where that isn't critical.
There is no place that they can take it to.
To a farm that they aren't concerned about being organic.
Well, to a farm that's not concerned about putting all these antibiotics
and most of the
back into the
like
foods.
That, yeah.
I know, and that's what the public should understand. That when you give this monstrous amount of antibiotics into the animal kingdom, that goes into the meat, it goes into the byproducts, and maybe into the milk.
Yeah.
Because there's no way to keep it out. I mean, that's the nature of these drugs.
And they have to give the antibiotics to the animals because they're stuck so close to each other that they'll get diseases from being in that miserable condition unless they're given antibiotics. So they have to do that just to keep the animals alive in the conditions that they're made to be in. And I don't know what the animals did to deserve that, you know.
Well, the animals did nothing to deserve it except they were found to be a source of protein for humans.
Yeah, and we like the taste of it. And,
yeah, I mean,
you know, people should do what they like, I guess.
I'm not. Now, just to be clear here, I think you're a vegetarian.
Yeah, but I'm learning to be a better one after being educated a little bit.
And I'm not a vegetarian. I do eat protein, animal proteins, and so I admit to my participation to a degree, but I hate to believe that I am personally responsible for the industry that is now present. I guess I am in the sense that it creates cheaper prices and cheaper products.
That's true. If the real price of what meat costs, that isn't, because we, you know, as taxpayers and government funding, and subsidies for different parts of the animal agriculture, you know, meat would actually cost a lot more. Also the health, you know, I mean, it's said that sometimes people think that eating meat isn't the most healthy thing for you. So there's some health drawbacks, you know, cholesterol.
Well, there are arguments, though, that
there are arguments about that.
There are arguments that humankind was raised on either. You could say it was found meat.
That would be a whole show talking about vegetarian versus
that. But well, I've had family members who were vegan and who were healthy for long periods of time on that diet, so that it can be done.
Actually, me and my wife have been vegetarians since 1972.
You look healthy enough to me.
And I'm still alive, yeah. Basically, I'm still alive and still feeling pretty good.
Good.
So it's possible, you know. But you know, people believe that they need to eat this kind of protein, and you know, and I'm not against that. Mm-hmm. It's just, but there is some kind of understanding that a person could get where they could maybe take a little time off for it. It's kind of interesting to me, actually, that if the world could be saved, you know, like to change the carbon dioxide, the whole, you know, we've got to have our electric cars, we've got to start coal mining. I mean, there's this huge thing, you know, and world could be completely changed by people taking a little time off from animal protein, which is growing bigger in China. You know, they've got a huge population, they all want to eat more meat. It's kind of like a sign of wealth, a sign of success to be able to eat.
There are so many ramifications from this. I mean, you mentioned China and beef. One of the more bizarre things that is happening right now in California is out in the Imperial County in California. There are farmers who get water for $20 to $30 a foot, acre foot, and they use that to grow alfalfa.
Absolutely.
Because they have early rights on that water, and then they actually ship that alfalfa across to China, 8,000 miles, so the Chinese can feed it to cows for milk and beef as part of the new rising standard of living in China, as that's well. China is abandoning its diet, and every place that has abandoned the native diets, almost every place in the world that has abandoned the native diet for the modern Western diet, ends up with obesity, diabetes, heart attacks,
different forms of cancer. So supposedly.
So anyway, but I mean, we have to understand that what an interrelated world it is.
It is. 1 acre per second of rainforest in Brazil is being cut down, and 88% of it's for animal agriculture. I know. For actually growing soybeans, send the soybeans to Europe and China, and also they're grazing the animals. That's like a football field every second, you know.
Oh, that's frightening.
And that's the lungs of the planet. It
is. And it was at one point it was they were cutting it down for pulp to make paper for boxes and newspapers. Now it's just to make grazing land and draining it out, and they're ruining the land because it won't sustain that. So they're constantly having to find
another piece of land.
Yeah.
And that rainforest sequesters carbon, you know, and we're worried about carbon.
And animal species, all kinds of things as well. So,
right, it's the greatest source of species extinction.
I don't know. It's discouraging. You know, we just don't see beyond the supermarket
Yeah, and we don't really have a real connection for the supermarket to what actually produces it.
Well, let's see if you guys from back there can get that little trailer up from Cowspiracy on the screen. Here we go, and we'll watch this for a bit.
Do you think there should be any concern of us making this documentary?
Of course. If you don't realize right now that you're putting your neck on the chopping block, you know, you better take that camera and throw it away.
It's an environmental disaster that's being ignored by the very people who should be championing.
Let's look at the fundamental problem here.
No one wants to talk about it because they're membership organizations, you know, a lot of them. They're looking to maximize the number of people making contributions.
The leading cause of environmental degradation is
we need to address that as well.
It's not up to the Department of Water Resources.
Hard to actually target like one thing.
I don't necessarily know what it is.
There's suppression and mismanagement of information everywhere. It abounds.
it starts at the local level, but then it goes all the way to Congress.
When you consider the devastation it's having on our planet as well as the oceans.
And we're in the middle of the largest mass extinction of species in 65 million years.
They can dictate the federal policies because they have so much political power.
And one of the largest industries on the planet with the biggest environmental impact, trying to keep us in the dark about how it's operating.
That's the one thing no one talks about. You know, everybody goes around that.
Unfortunately, we are no longer able to fund your film project. We had a meeting, and due to the growing controversial subject matter, we have some concerns and have to pull out.
You're going up against people that have massive legal resources, and you have nothing.
A lot of people just keep their mouths shut because they don't want to be the next one with the bullet to their head.
I don't know that I would want to comment on that.
Well, and they do a good job of getting you excited about the subject. But I've watched the program, and I know you have more than once. You know, part of it is absolutely on point, in my opinion. I don't have any quarrel with the essential truth of the information they're providing. I might have some quarrel with the remedies they offer. Mm-hmm. But what is your take on this?
Well, I don't know. I think that's the really interesting part. Is there's a political narrative that's set up where, you know, I'm okay and you're not, you know, and it's generally set up against the fossil fuel industry, which isn't something that I'm for. Like Naomi Klein, the Pope's encyclical last week, mm-hmm. they don't mention anything about animal agriculture. Naomi Klein is like the spokesperson these days.
Naomi Klein is one of my heroes.
Yeah, she's great, but I've never heard her say a word about it.
She hasn't addressed this, doesn't pay attention to it.
And I got something in the email today that she's going to get together with the Pope, and they're going to figure out, you know, how to save the world. But they're going to have to figure out, this world could be saved or really improved really quick with just a little bit of personal change that people could make, you know. And I'm not trying to advocate for people should quit eating meat or they should do this or that.
Well, you're right. I mean, a little bit of change by 3 or 4 billion people, a little bit by 3 or 4 billion people is going to make a big impact on the world. But how do you overcome it? Now, one of the things that bother me about the cost...
Information, I think, is really important.
Absolutely.
And which isn't really, information isn't, it's kind of like Al Gore made The Inconvenient Truth. Mm-hmm. I just saw this yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, and I started researching about this. Someone made another show called Meet the Truth, M-E-A-T, the Truth. And she just goes, I saw The Inconvenient Truth. You didn't even mention animal agriculture.
Mm-hmm. He didn't, that's true.
And she's like, and she just went and hammered all of these. I mean, the information's there. That was in 2008. And I'm like, and I'm in with all these progressive people. 75% of the people in America call themselves environmentalists. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, people.
They have a different definition of what that means.
Often. They want to help, yeah. I mean, like my friend today was telling me how he takes a 5-gallon bucket and saves the water. You know, that's coming out that's too cold for a shower, and goes out, and a quarter pounder takes 660 gallons of water.
You talking about hamburger, a quarter pound of hamburger.
Yeah, you go to McDonald's and eat a quarter pounder.
So that's a lot of shower dripping, a lot of showers.
It's 2 months of showers, of the whole complete shower, you know. But we're not being informed about that, and that's why I feel so lucky to get to be on the show and promote this a little bit, you know.
I'm glad the enthusiasm is contagious. It is at first there's a sense, whenever you see a truth like this, Inconvenient Truth being the title, but whenever you see something that's so starkly challenging and seems so impossibly true to be true, your first reaction is to deny it. You just say that can't be so, because we don't see the size of the world. We live in our little small space. So when somebody tells us that 80% of the antibiotics in the United States are used in animal food for animal treatment, then we can't conceive of that. And all the rest of this data, all these dead zones around the world, and all the water that's being polluted, and all this manure that's being stored, and all the methane that's being produced, we only remember one cow. We don't remember 5,000 or 5 million cows.
Right.
And the rainforest being cut down. But how are we going to, I mean, I think this is always the issue. It takes constant hammering of the message before people even begin to acknowledge there might be a truth there.
I think like a little drop of consciousness, you know, like you throw a stone in the pond, and the ripples just ripple, you know, like I didn't understand this, and I've been around this kind of experience for quite a long time, you know, and now it's all of a sudden starting to sink in, and I want to help somehow. Like even Juanita, my wife, who's producing the show, who's probably the most good person on the planet that I've ever met. She's like, I want to become a vegan, you know, because she loves cheese, you know, but she thinks if I could give that up and I could help things out a little bit better, you know. Well, so I think it's just kind of like consciousness, you know, like one consciousness can spread to another person, one by one heart to another, you know, not to sound religious, but then we can start to understand what's really important in life, you know, which is to be alive and to be helpful.
Well, to be healthy,
and
to have a consciousness and feel good as to how you live. Yeah. I think that's important. You know, there are so many people who are greedy and grasping for more. Yeah. Well, we can't get into that issue, but thank you, Juanita, one of the nicest women in the world.
Yeah. Well, most good, not always the nicest.
And Greg's partner and spouse. And thank you, Allie. We're about to end the show again. Anybody who's interested in this, you can contact. They can watch the Cowspiracy film online. You can find it, watch it. It's interesting to watch. And if you want to help with these other endeavors, check with us, and we'll tell you how to do it.
Thank you.